This young lady had to be about 10 years old. I remember I was in Reno, Nevada, and for some reason, one summer I decided I wanted to umpire fast pitch softball. I remember this one incident where this young lady, as I mentioned, 10 years old, came to the plate, and I noticed she looked very nervous and scared, not unlike many kids, but she just had a different look in her eye. But as she approached the plate, I did notice that someone in her either family or someone who knew her started yelling, just yelling at her, screaming at her, telling her she better hit the ball and she better not embarrass her family. And the woman said, besides, you're going to embarrass your family. Well, ultimately, unfortunately, this little girl, she struck out, and this woman dug in on her again as she went back to the dugout. Well, as the game went on, wouldn't you know it, last inning, score is this young lady's team needed 2 runs to win. Runner on first and second, 2 outs. She comes to the plate. This woman really starts screaming now. She's just calling her names and telling her she's disgraceful and that type of thing. Well, she came to the plate, and first 2 pitches are a strike. Her coach calls timeout, which was a smart move. I decided to take the opportunity to take my mask off and go and talk to this woman who's screaming at this young lady. And I warned her, you need to stop that. I don't know who you are, but that's not going to be tolerated here on this field. Well, as the young lady came back to the plate, this woman started in again, calling her names and saying, don't embarrass the family. I called timeout immediately, and I kicked her out of the game. I kicked her out of the park. If I could, I'd have kicked her butt out of the city and the state, because there's no excuse for that. Well, after she cursed me out a few times and made her way out of the park, the game started again. This little girl came up to the plate, and she hit a bomb to right center, double. The winning score came around third base, game over. So after all the celebration and that type of thing, as I was walking off the field, I asked that young lady, are you okay? And she wiped her tears away and looked at me and said, yeah, I'm fine. She said, by the way, thank you for kicking my mom out of here. She's always talking about me embarrassing the family, when in fact, she embarrasses me. So thank you for kicking her out. I felt a little weird saying, you're welcome, but I did. And but that's the issue we're talking about today. Overzealous parents and their negative impact on the development of their children, especially in the future. Stay with us. We're going to talk more about this. Hey, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and don't hesitate to put in your comments or questions you have about this topic or other topics that we have addressed in the past or maybe even in the future. We look forward to corresponding with you. You know, youth sports, in my opinion, can be very important in the lives of kids in terms of their development. There's so many lessons kids can learn from their participation in sport. They learn about teamwork, they learn about respect for authority or respect for rules, they learn about how to work with people in a collective cause. They learn about how to overcome adversity, both personally and as a team. There's so many lessons, but the navigators of that lesson are the parents. And overzealous parents, man, not only can they hurt their development of children, but they can impact their appetite to play sports. Let me share with you a couple of examples of what's been happening lately in terms of kids and their participation in sport. Did you know that kids between the ages of 6 and 12, the number of kids is down by 8% in the last decade? Almost 45% of children between the ages of 6 and 12 play team sports regularly. That was in 2008. Now only 37% of children participate in team sports. The only sports that saw growth over the past 8 years is golf, gymnastics, ice hockey, and track and field. The other one that saw a lot of growth in the past decade are the X Games. Now, why? With all due respect to X Games, I have no problem with that. I enjoy some of them actually. But it's because most parents don't know much about it. They don't participate. They're not there yelling and screaming. So the kids are free to be who they are, free to have fun. That's what's the most important thing in youth sports. Children, have fun. That's your job as a child. Have fun. And so I would argue another reason for these children dropping out of youth sports possibly could be these overzealous parents. You know, and it's important to understand, my background in sport, and in particular youth sport, is primarily football, basketball, baseball, softball. But I'm blessed enough to have at least one of my grandchildren plays tennis. And when I go to these tennis matches, I see some similarities in overzealous parents and the pressure they put on their children. I can't tell you how many times I've seen children playing tennis in a match, and suddenly as their parents say something to them, usually it's a short statement or something, sometimes it's just a look, the kids just literally break down on the court and they're just crying their eyes out because the pressure that their parents have put on them is overwhelming. And their job is to play tennis. Now, it comes to a point where they may get more serious about it. They may have dreams about going on to a higher level to play sport, but not at 10 years old. What are we doing? Parents, what are we doing? Putting that type of pressure on our young people. We need to get a handle on it, because by the time you realized that you've unintentionally injured your child in their self-confidence, their self-esteem, how to handle pressure, how to overcome adversity, and quite frankly, their own self-worth. By the time you realize that maybe you participate in the injury of that in that child, it might be too late. So we just need to think about it. It's very, very important. So I want to encourage you to take a step back and really talk to your child about why they are playing. And hopefully, the first thing they say is because I'm having fun. That's the most important thing. You know, the other thing we have to be careful of, parents, and with regards to our children and playing youth sports, and I've seen this on a number of levels. It's important. We just talked about the pressure, right? The pressure that are on kids, and sometimes how that pressure can cause kids to leave youth sports. They can quit. But the other side of that coin is we have to be careful and understand that we're not teaching our kids to quit. You know, I'm sure a lot of youth coaches out there can understand what I'm saying. You always get that parent that comes up and says, well, why isn't Johnny playing? Why isn't Johnny participating as much as we think he should? Well, there are a number of reasons for that. One could be is Johnny's still in development. Johnny, our job as coaches is to put those players in positions to be successful. And sometimes if Johnny wants to be a pitcher and his arm is not strong enough yet, well, he might make a great shortstop at this point because he feels the ball well and he's getting better. Or Johnny's at the plate and he's scared of the ball. So that's going to injure his self-esteem. But in practice, we're going to work on him getting more courage at the plate and get his confidence up. There are a number of different reasons. But if you have a parent like I had on a number of occasions when they ask why their child is not playing and they think that the child should, then they pass that along to the child. And eventually what happens over time, if this happens and happens over again, you're teaching your child to quit. Instead of teaching your child how to endure, how to work hard, how to hone their skills. See, it's not the destination, it's the journey that you get out of playing youth sports. Parents, we have to understand that, and we have to stand on that. I know it's hard to watch your child out there and they look sad, they're sitting on the bench or whatever. I know that's heartbreaking. But what's devastating is if you have that child and their whole life, you have supported them in quitting and not finishing what they've started. As an adult, you'll see that pattern continue. Another piece of food for thought. And I hope you really take that seriously and think about it. We can't teach our children to quit. We got to teach them to endure and work hard, because that's what's going to pay off. I was asked to coach a youth all-star football team. It's probably been about 10 years now. It was a great experience. I was able to coach with some guys that I played ball with, and we had this all-star team. And everything was going well. We only had a week to prepare before the game. So we had to bring all these young men together and bring them together as a team. I had an interesting experience related to the topic we're talking about here today. After one practice, I had a parent approach me and ask me a question. After he wanted me to read him my resume as a coach and a player, he then asked me, "My son made this all-star team as a inside linebacker. Why do you have him playing outside linebacker?" So I explained to him that this was a team and the best fit for him was to play outside linebacker. And I was teaching him the techniques of playing outside linebacker. The parent went on to argue with me and tell me I was a terrible coach and that I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't really take that seriously. But we went on and coached this child as an outside linebacker. And we went into the game, and that young man did very well. He did extremely well, in fact. But after the game, we were sitting talking in the locker room, and I asked him, I said, "Well, let me ask you a question. Did your father play football? Did he play any sports?" And he says, "No, my dad's never played a sport in his life." I said, "Then why was he so bent on you playing inside linebacker as opposed to outside?" And he said, "My dad really doesn't know what he's talking about, but I guess he was just looking out for me." So I told the young man, there's a point in your life where you're going to have to look out for yourself and understand that nothing in this life is going to be given to you, but maybe an opportunity. And when you get that opportunity, you got to take advantage of it. And I gave you an opportunity to learn a new position, and I hope you enjoyed it. And he said, "Thank you, Coach, I did. I learned a lot about football because it forced me to understand the entire defense, not just what I was doing." By the way, that young man went on to win Defensive Player of the Game, and he got a scholarship to college. So, lesson learned from football. And unfortunately, his father almost ruined it. We have got to get a handle on this, and we can turn this around and stop losing our kids to video games and losing them to other things that won't help them develop. Sport is a great tool to do that. It's not the only tool, but it's a great tool to help these kids develop and move on and learn some things as they go on. Hey, thank you for joining us today. I hope you reply. I hope you subscribe to the channel. And then if you have any questions or comment about today's topic or any other topic, please don't hesitate to put it in the comment section. We look forward to coming back to you next week. Sorry for missing last week, but we had to avoid Hurricane Dorian, which was an interesting experience. But fortunately, everyone's doing fine. We made it through, and we look forward to it. Before we sign off, though, I want to answer a question. I got a question from Johnny. Johnny was commenting on last week's topic with regards to athletic transition and disengagement from sport. Johnny said he didn't understand why athletes would be so troubled after leaving sport, when in fact they should be thankful that they had the opportunity to be a superstar. Plus, he says, many of the pro athletes made a lot of money. Okay, so just a couple of quick points. Johnny, first of all, not all pro athletes make a lot of money. They didn't make a lot of money. If you're watching this show, you're looking at one right now. I mean, I wasn't starving, and I'm thankful for what I got. But put it this way, the football players now, in 1 week, make more than I made in 6 years. Okay, so I hope that puts it in perspective. And then the other thing is, not all athletes are superstars. And just try to understand that they're not just playing sport. Sport is playing them in a way that it means the world to most athletes, their participation. And sometimes it means too much, and that hurts them when they have to leave. But it's an emotional experience, and I know it's very hard to understand if you haven't been there and done that. But I guess it's a point where you have to trust what maybe you can't conceive. But again, most athletes, they bounce back, they get back on their feet, but it takes a little while. It's a tough transition. Hey everyone, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and be sure to tune in next week. We're gonna have a really good show. I think next week we're probably gonna answer more questions and do some talk about some interesting things. So thanks for joining us, and don't forget, it's about time. Time to speak up. Hey, God bless you and take care.